Chinese real estate giant Evergrande, a company with 330 billion in liabilities, has just declared bankruptcy.
Evergrande has filed for protection from creditors in a U.S. bankruptcy court.
Today, there was even more bad news when Evergrande had filed for protection from creditors in a New York court.
Today, we will explore together what has happened, the potential contagion effect, and why, in my opinion, China is in a much more challenging situation than it might appear. In cases like this, when a massive company with various debt falls, concerns arise about the contagion effect where its issues could impact the economy at large and other sectors or countries. Evergrande is among the largest Chinese property developers, and due to its exceptionally high debt, stands as a symbol of China's economic crisis. Evergrande has filed for bankruptcy and sought creditors' protection in a Manhattan court under Chapter 15 of the United States Bankruptcy Code. This chapter shields non-US companies undergoing creditor-driven restructuring from potential lawsuits or asset freezes in the United States. The company has requested the recognition of an ongoing restructuring discussion in Hong Kong, the Cayman Islands, and British Virgin Islands. As we will see, this in itself isn't news. In fact, Evergrande defaulted as early as 2021 and announced an offshore debt restructuring plan in March. However, Evergrande has accumulated 330 billion in liabilities, a dire situation that even Biden labeled as a ticking time bomb. The Evergrande crisis is situated within a Chinese real sector that is facing significant challenges. Developers and real estate constructors are at the heart of liquidity crisis, estimated to have incurred losses of 81 billion over the past 2 years. This figure surpasses the combined profit of Microsoft and Google. Moreover, according to various industry analysts, this crisis doesn't appear to be short-lived. It could persist for many years. Another unfavorable aspect of China's economy is the decline in foreign direct investment made in the country, indicating a notable decrease in recent years. Considering that consumption in China is not experiencing growth but is rather contracting, and coupled with the country's significant demographic challenge, it raises questions about investing in a nation facing such conditions. The demographic aspect is also noteworthy. Chinese working age population is projected to decline significantly over the coming decades, potentially limiting China's aspiration to become the world's leading economy. Despite Chinese vast population, the peak of its working age population, a prime consumption age group, has been reached. This stands in contrast to the United States, where the working age population continues to grow. Additionally, Chinese aging population poses challenges. At the current trajectory, China could lose half of its population by the year 2100. But there is no denying, I have investment in Chinese market myself, but of course they're not doing well. Over 5 years, they've yielded a performance of minus 35%, making earning in this market phase practically impossible. When it comes to Asian market, though, there is something that has brought satisfaction, but I will discuss that in another video. In reality, these downturns present opportunities to acquire shares at lower average prices. Personally, my accumulation plan for an ETF that encompasses key Asian markets, China and India, remains ongoing. But let's turn our attention back to Evergrande. What's happening now? Evergrande reported net losses of 66 million for 2021 and 14 million for 2022. At the moment, the primary concerns among investors revolve around the risk of contagion and the contraction of GDP. To elaborate, since mid-2021, which marked the beginning of the Chinese real estate debt crisis, around 40% of the companies involved in home sales in China have faced bankruptcy. Currently, the second most frequently mentioned name after Evergrande is Country Garden. Country Garden is the largest real estate developer in China, and signs of potential contagion are emerging. In fact, Country Garden struggled to make coupon payment on its dollar-denominated bonds. Moreover, it issued a profit warning, a deeply concerning signal for the market, essentially conveying to investors that profit targets might not be met and substantial losses could be incurred. Experts suggest that Country Garden's impact on the market could even surpass that of Evergrande due to its scale and exposure. Notably, the company suspended trading of at least 10 of its bonds on the mainland of China. Let's also recall that the Chinese real estate sector has long been a vital driver of the country's growth. It now accounts for up to 30% of Chinese gross domestic product. Naturally, the government is contemplating corrective measures. In fact, the Chinese central bank recently lowered interest rates, particularly for medium-term loans. The intention behind this move is to reduce financial costs and, more importantly, encourage banks to offer loans at more favorable rates. As we already observed, it's the entire Chinese economy that is at risk of slowing down. Indeed, there is a very real concern among investors that China may not be able to achieve its 5% growth rate. When it comes to gross domestic product (GDP), this isn't a random figure. For China, failing to reach 5% growth means being unable to guarantee a salary to all those entering the job market. There is another destabilizing factor: the currency. You might not have noticed, but despite higher inflation in America and the dollar losing purchasing power, the Chinese currency has depreciated even further against the dollar. This is another symptom of the considerable uncertainty within China, leading investors to prefer holding dollars instead of Chinese currency. All these factors give ample food for thought, especially because I'm currently reading Ray Dalio's book on the New World Order. The book highlights several fundamental differences between Chinese and American ways of thinking. For instance, China takes much longer-term perspective, not concerned with the short-term consequences of certain sections. Moreover, the Chinese government tends to optimize for the collective rather than the individual. However, Ray Dalio also points out that Xi Jinping operates in a somewhat more autocratic manner compared to his predecessors. For instance, Xi has even inserted a concept known as Xi thought into the Chinese constitution. It's worth noting that Xi Jinping is attempting a quite difficult task. In fact, China is trying to merge two vastly different economic models, capitalism and communism, a task many consider impossible. So the real question to consider is, are we truly witnessing the end of Chinese economic miracle? Of course, no one can predict this future, but on this channel I'd like to provide some thought-provoking insights. From various studies on the subject, it appears that some of the strengths that fueled Chinese economy over the past 20 years are now weakening. China could be facing what technically termed the middle income trap. This term describes an economy slowdown caused by political and macroeconomic factors. It seems that China might have hit a plateau condition in which it struggles to surpass a certain level of economic development due to strategic mistakes. For instance, it heavily invested in areas that yielded low return on investment. Real estate, for instance, as we discussed, is experiencing a significant bubble and offers lower returns compared to other sectors like technology. The World Bank has also used this term to describe the phenomenon, often observed in emerging economies, where they cease to emerge because they struggle to shift investment from low growth, low productivity sectors to sectors that would boost productivity. While economies like South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore have managed to transcend this middle-income trap crisis. But other analysts point to another problem. Before the pandemic, Chinese economy was built on an agreement between the government and the citizens. No politics, no problem. In practice, the Chinese has entrusted the Communist Party with control over private property rights. China is nearly a dictatorship, but as long as people stayed out of politics and let Communist Party govern, they believed that they would stay out of their economic lives, based on an unwritten agreement. However, when Xi Jinping took power around 2013, his economic interference became increasingly assertive, to the extent that by 2020 there was the case of Jack Ma, a signal to entrepreneurs that power in China would firmly remain with the party. From there, the impossibility of listing companies on the market, and even the direct party intervention in the economic decision of major party enterprise ensued. But these interventions are not only unfavorable for local entrepreneurs and foreign capital. At the level of ordinary people, this uncertainty beyond their control erodes trust in the system, causing them to hold on to savings, invest less, and spend less. Optimism about the future shift to pessimism, marked by risk aversion and reduced spending. This, of course, undermines the government's ability to stimulate the economy, not only today, but also in the years to come. These are the challenges that the Chinese government must tackle during this period. If left unsolved, they could significantly undermine Chinese development in the decades ahead.